Thanks for that, Father Duck, because I have no idea what I'm going to say still. Um, so, I worked really hard on this, and I think I'm just going to keep it real with you tonight. So I want to tell you I got the gig. The other day, it's like 2-3 days ago, I got a text from Ashley Martin, and she's like, "Hey Edgar, at LifeNight, we're talking about the dangers of drugs and alcohol, and I've been asking around, and a few people have been bringing up your name. Would you want to give a talk?" And I was like, "Yeah, I love talking about drugs, but who's people, and what are they saying about me?" And so, well, that's how I ended up here tonight. I'm a cradle Catholic. I grew up going to Mass on Sundays with my family. We'd pray the rosary every day, just about, when my parents would force me. And my parents immigrated from Mexico. So when I was younger, we would go to Mexico during the summer and in December. And I loved going. It was like the Wild West. I was like, there's no rules over there. There's no parental supervision. And so it was around the time when I was in 6th grade. I think I was like 12 years old. I started drinking alcohol when we got there. And that was the first time that I got drunk. I was just 12 years old. And over the years after that, I started struggling a lot with depression. I would steal my parents' alcohol, and I'd drink at school. And I couldn't figure out why I was so sad all the time. I know now that alcohol is a depressant. Back then I didn't know, so I would drink because I was depressed, but I was depressed because I was drinking. So by the time I got to when I was 15, I started seeing a counselor with my mom, and it was really hard on my family and on her because they knew that I was struggling already at such a young age with alcohol, and I couldn't break free. I felt so lonely. I was just alone all the time and depressed. And by the time I got to 17, I had already been arrested twice. And when I got to 17, it was the first time that I tried marijuana for the first time. And I'll admit, I liked it because it was something new. It was different, no hangovers. And I was looking for an escape from reality. And that led to a gateway of other drugs. So people say that marijuana isn't addicting, but I think it's the one that I was addicted to the most. For years, I tried to quit smoking weed, but instead, I was getting sucked into the lifestyle. And that's something people don't tell you. When you start doing drugs, it's a lifestyle, it's a life choice. Doctors hang out with doctors, teachers hang out with teachers, engineers hang out with engineers, drug dealers hang out with drug dealers. You become, the friend group that you're with. Whoever you hang out with, that's who you become. And so, in high school, I would get checked out every Friday to go see a counselor, but I was doing drugs on the side, and my parents didn't know about this. And I was hanging out with a group of friends, and so talented. All of them were, varsity, all-stars. In baseball, football, they could have had great careers. But all that time and talent was wasted on drugs and partying. And I got sucked into that life. And I remember when I was 19 years old, I had already tried, various amounts of drugs, apart from marijuana, others that I'd rather not mention. My life was going nowhere. I had just graduated high school, and I had no plan for the future. I didn't think I was going to go to college with the grades that I had. I couldn't start a career, and out of desperation, I decided to join the military. But that desperation only came about when I saw my dad's face one day. I remember I was sitting in my room, and my dad was outside working really hard, planting trees. And so I thought, it was kind of like a day like this. It was gray and cold outside. And so, I'm going to go help my dad. And when I got there, he looked up at me, and his face was just so sad. And it tore me apart, just the way that he looked at me. There's a picture that I like to reflect on. It's a painting of this guy who's tying his arm, and he's shooting up heroin. But the arm that he has tied is actually Jesus' arm, and Jesus is in pain, and he's crying out to God the Father, like, "This hurts, please make it stop." And the guy who's tying the arm is also crying out, like, "I'm imprisoned, please make it stop." And that's kind of like the look that I saw on my dad's face. And I realized that I needed to make a choice. I could either let this thing, take over my life and become nobody. I could end up dead or imprisoned or just addicted on some street somewhere. Or I could take action. And so I quit cold turkey. I would go to work, and I would come home from work, and I would sit in a corner of my room, and I would tie myself to a chair, and I would just go through the withdrawals. And it got so horrible that I got fired from my job because I could never smile. And it was right after I got clean that I decided to join the military. And so I left 2 months after I enlisted. And when I came back, my dad was gone. He had gone to prison. And I was so hurt and broken over that I went back to it. I started smoking weed again. And while I was gone, I was hearing all these stories about my friends. A lot of them were on the run for committing crimes. Some of them were shot and killed. There's guys that I would party with before, and a drug deal had gone wrong, and he got shot and killed, and they found him in a garbage can the next day. Had another friend who got killed over a cell phone at a party. Just friends committing suicide, doing drugs. The thing about drugs is that it doesn't solve anything. You take drugs because you're trying to self-medicate, but instead you're prolonging the suffering because you have that fear of looking at and dealing with the things that you're going through. And so I was prolonging my suffering, and I did that for years. I did that for 4 years, 5 years maybe. But my friends couldn't find an escape. And so they'd end up in prison, or some of them would commit suicide, or some of them would just get killed because you are who you hang out with. And so I wanted to hang out with a better group of friends, and some of them were coming here to OSU. And honestly, I only followed them just because I wanted to be with them. I had no plans for college, and I just wanted my friends. My dad was gone, and I just needed someone. And so I get to OSU, and I fell into that typical party, college lifestyle. I was drinking, I was partying almost every day of the week, and still doing drugs. And my grades were all F's and W's and D's, and I was just going nowhere with my life. But I got lucky because one day I was just so broken and alone, and I didn't know where to go. And when I was a kid, I remember when I wanted to run away from any troubles at home, I would just run to the church down the street. And even though the doors weren't open, I would still hang out outside. And I walked into St. John's, and I just broke down crying. And I said, "God, just send anyone. I just want one friend who cares about me, because these friends here, they only want to hang out with me when they want to party, when they want something from me. And they weren't good friends." Now, I pray for them still every day, and I hope that they're free from that bondage. And so God did send a friend. His name's Michael Martin, and he was very patient with me. I was still doing drugs, I was still partying, but he would invite me to his Bible study every time he saw me. And I said, this guy's serious about his faith. And so I went to his Bible studies, and one day he asked me, he's like, Edgar, have you ever thought about going on a mission trip? And I said, yeah, I would love to help people. And he's like, well, you should go to this website and sign up for a mission trip, and then, let me know. And so I did it that night. And I was thinking, I was going to go to a third world country like Mexico, Africa, somewhere, and over like my selfish desire, I saw Rome, and I was like, I want to go to Rome. I saw a Lizzie McGuire movie. I was like, I want to go there. And so I signed up for Rome. And I told Michael, and so later that spring, this is how bad of a student I was, y'all. It was the spring break after my spring break, after our spring break, that I went on that mission trip. So I had like a 3-week-long spring break. And I had no idea what Holy Week was. I didn't know that it was a Jubilee Year of Mercy. And I didn't know that I was going to Rome during Holy Week. But there I was. And I remember the moment it happened. I mean, I was smoking weed and partying up until the week of that we went to Rome. And the second day, our mission team leader said, hey, we're going to the Vatican for Mass. And I said, wow, the Vatican, where's that, So ignorant. And so we walk over there, and we go underneath the Vatican. And the priest, starts his homily. And he said, God loves you. God loves you a lot. Just look at where you're at. You're in the womb of the Catholic Church. And in that moment, it was in an instant. Like I felt something like come over me. Like all the love that I had been seeking through partying, through drugs, alcohol, through everything, was fulfilled in that moment. I had just been seeking for something to satisfy this hollowness, this hole in my heart, through all these different things. Through drugs, they get more intense the more you do them, and it's never going to satisfy that longing in your heart. But in that moment, God did. And after that, I came home, and I never had an appetite for it again. I tried so many times to quit doing drugs, to stop drinking, and I couldn't. Nothing would help. It was like God's love and mercy in that moment fulfilled me, my desire, that longing that I had. And I came back, and I never had an appetite for it again. I've never wanted to do it again. And He changed my life forever. And I knew that I needed to stop hanging out with the friends that I was hanging out with. They weren't good for me. I mean, pray for your friends, If they struggle with any sort of addiction, pray that, they break free from those bondages because they're not themselves. So I discovered that the intellect is a gift from God. And by doing drugs, I would basically be saying, God, thank you, but no thank you. I want to do what I want to do. I would be rejecting His gift. So after that semester, fall 2016, I had a chance, kind of like a moment of redemption. I was asked to join a task force within the military to help stop drug trafficking. And I just thought, how ironic is it that someone who struggles with drug addiction and God has healed him, and now I get to go and help stop that. And I got to see it from both sides of the law. And there's just so much brokenness. So many families torn by drugs. So many people that are just so lonely and they just want a friend. They're just so depressed and they just keep prolonging their suffering by doing drugs because they can't face whatever's going on in their hearts. And I was very honored and very blessed to be a part of that task force. And so I come back to college and I start making new friends. And like I said, you are who you hang out with. If you want to grow in virtue, you get you some virtuous friends. If you want to grow in holiness, if you want to be a saint, then you hang out with friends who are pursuing those things as well. You know, I'm so lucky to have the community that I have, the friends that I have, because they've been so patient with me. You know, sometimes it's hard for me to relate to them because they haven't been through what I've been through. They haven't experienced those things. But they stuck with me. They've been patient with me. They try to understand me. And they push me to be a better version of myself, to grow in virtue and holiness. And they correct me every time that I do something wrong. Anytime I have like a small like inclination to like, you know, go to that past life, they steer me away from it. I'm so lucky to have the friends that I have. I'm so lucky to have the family that I have, because they stuck with me through it all. If you do drugs, every second that you're doing those drugs, you're never going to get that time back. You're never going to get it back. I wasted years of my life doing drugs, partying, drinking alcohol. And in the meantime, my family was just waiting for me, praying for me. They wanted to be a part of my life, and I kept rejecting them because I love doing drugs more than I love them. They just want to be a part of your life the same way that Jesus wants to be a part of your life. If you have any passion for anything, for art, for music, for sports, whatever it is, drugs will rob that from you. It will take that away from you. It will numb you. Choose your family. Choose your friends. Choose those who are going to push you to be a saint. I love this verse in Timothy 2:22. He says, "So flee youthful passions and pursue righteousness, faith, love, and peace, along with those who will call on the Lord from a pure heart." Choose your friends wisely. Choose those who call on the Lord with a pure heart. Because the time that you are spending doing drugs, alcohol, and partying, you're never going to get that time back. And it's going to be wasted time. It's going to be wasted talent. One of my favorite saints is St. Francis of Assisi. And he has this incredible line. He says, "I have been all things unholy. If God can work through me, he can work through anyone." And so, my friends, I want you to remember that God loves you very much. So much that your sin is a grain of sand compared to the mountain of his love. That your sin is a teardrop compared to the vast ocean that is his mercy. Call on Jesus, call on the Lord. Hang out with good friends. Strive for sainthood together. Strive for holiness together. Stay away from drugs. Stay away from partying and alcohol. Because it's going to rob you of your time. And it's going to steal you of your talent. Thank you.
Grab the clicker real quick. right, thank you so much, Edgar. That was really powerful. I hope you all got something out of that. My part's not going to be quite as exciting. So I'm going to talk to you about the church's teaching on what drugs and alcohol. I'm not going to bore you with statistics because I think you've all kind of heard that before. But I want to give you tools that you can use to help you say no. So if sometime in the future, if you're ever faced with an opportunity to do drugs or alcohol, that you'll have the skills and the knowledge of being able to say no. Okay, so first, human dignity. So the church declares that all life is sacred. All humans are worthy of life. All humans are sacred. So our very essence or nature as humans, we're raised to be in the resemblance of God. God created us for that, to be able to live life as God wants us to live. So that when we say that all humans have a dignity that must be upheld, both by ourselves and others. So what we're doing is not only what's good for us, but we're trying to do what's good for everyone, all of our friends and everyone around us. So what does the church say about drinking and alcohol and drugs? So first, the Catechism of the Catholic Church says, "The virtue of temperance disposes us to avoid every kind of excess, the abuse of food, alcohol, tobacco, or medicine. Those incur grave guilt who by drunkenness or a love of speed endanger their own and others' safety on the road, at sea, or in the air." And then the use of drugs inflicts very grave damage on human health and life. Their use, except on strictly therapeutic grounds, is a grave offense. Clandestine production of and trafficking in drugs are scandalous practices. They constitute direct cooperation in evil, since they encourage people to practices gravely contrary to the moral law. That's a lot, I know. But what's kind of fascinating is that the Catechism of the Catholic Church actually puts drugs and alcohol in with the Ten Commandments, thou shalt not kill. So why do you think that the Catholic Church feels that we should have the abuse of drugs and alcohol in the thou shalt not kill? So, well, the church puts it there because it's very important about who we are. If we consume too much of one thing, that's, have you ever heard of gluttony? So that's a sin. And what you're doing is you're hurting yourself, which is also kind of, that's like killing yourself and your dignity as a person. So we're going to talk about alcohol and what they say about alcohol. So we are called to live the virtue of temperance, moderation. So I think of that as like if you have something that you just love more than anything, like I go back to this book in my childhood. It was called The Chocolate Touch. I don't know if any of you have ever read it, but it was one of my very favorite books. And in that book, the little boy loves chocolate so much. I mean, everything. That's all. He would skip his food, his regular food, because all he wanted was chocolate. And he was given this special piece of chocolate at the candy counter. And they said that anything, it makes chocolate out of everything. And so then when he ate this chocolate, everything he touched became chocolate. His musical instrument, his parents, because he would hug his parents and they became chocolate. And he realized at the end that his want and need for all this chocolate was really, all it was doing was harming him and everybody that he loved and everything that he loved. So it was a really good book. It's an easy read, so I recommend checking it out. So when we don't practice this virtue of moderation, it puts ourselves in grave danger and those around us. So if you think about like the guy in The Chocolate Touch, he put himself in danger by eating that much chocolate. I mean, that is not healthy. But he also put everyone around him in danger because everything that he touched became chocolate. And he had nobody left in his life. So with that being said, we have to use authority, like not only temperance and moderation, but as Catholics, we're called to obedience. And so we've got to follow what the law says too. So what the law is, you are not to drink until you're 21. So drinking before you turn 21 is not obedience to the law, which is in turn not obedient to the Catholic Church, because we're called to be obedient to society and in the church. What you may think that that's kind of, well, it's my body, I can do what I want, but it is not your right to do that, because we are called by God to obedience. So, drugs, the church is very, very clear about the use of drugs. It says, the use of drugs inflicts very serious or grave damage on human health and life. Their use, except for very strict medical grounds, is a serious sin. The use of drugs is contrary or opposite of the moral law that protects our dignity and our health. Drugs and alcohol hinder our relationship with Jesus Christ. If you get to where you're doing something so much and it takes you away from your love of God and your faith, it draws you into a deeper sin. And the more sin that you do, the deeper you fall into that sin. So we are called as Christians to live examples of Christ's great love for everyone. So, St. Paul said in 1 Peter chapter 5, verses 8 through 9, says, "Be sober, be watchful. Your adversary, the devil, prowls around like a roaring lion, seeking someone to devour. Resist him, firm in your faith, knowing that the same experience of suffering is required for your brotherhood throughout the world." The devil is real and is fighting for your soul. Staying sober and staying alert and being aware of the temptations, especially of drugs and alcohol, will help you stand strong against the devil. And all of us, no matter if we've ever used drugs or not, are called to holiness. We're on the same journey. As St. Paul said, we need each other's prayers and encouragement to help us along this journey. So we're not called to live as one, but as a community. Just like Edgar said, surround yourself with people you want to be like. We're all called to be saints, so surround yourself with people that want to be saints as well, that kind of lift you up and you can lift them up as well. So, that's the church's teaching. So when you go back into your groups tonight, your small groups, you're going to talk about more deeper into what the church teaches about drugs and alcohol and how you can help each other. I just want to throw this out there too. If any of you ever have struggles with that, come to me anonymously and we'll get you help. So there's a couple of announcements since we're finished with that. So for the first one, for kids aged 9 through 14, so this is mostly like edge kids, on October 25th, they're having the Knights of Columbus. They're holding a soccer challenge at Babcock Soccer Fields, Field 1. If you are interested in doing that, come to me afterwards, and I'll get you all the information who to contact about that. So, and then the next two are for 9th through 12th grade. So our first one is Diocesan Youth Conference, which is usually a big conference held in Tulsa every year. Well, this year, because of COVID, they're making it smaller, and so it's going to be in 2 different locations, and we're one of the locations. So we're going to have here, they're going to have some really great speakers that's going to be on, it's a video, but it's going to be really, really interesting, and there's going to be small group breakout sessions, but it is going to be here, and so I really want all of our kids to come, 9th through 12th grade, have a big presence from our St. Francis Xavier kids. And that is on November 7th, it's a Saturday, from 9 o'clock to 4 o'clock, and it's $10, and it includes breakfast, lunch, and dinner, so. And then the last one is, there's a Bible study that I'm starting for a life team, so grades 9 through 12, and it is going to be Wednesday nights starting November 4th from 6 to 7 o'clock in the youth center. And each week we're going to take the readings from the upcoming weekend, and we're going to dive in and really get deep in those readings and kind of help you understand what's going on. So if you're interested in any of that, contact me or let me know tonight, and I'll put you down for the Summit Discipleship Group.